We should be live.
Yo, what's up?
Welcome, everyone, to the first inaugural stream of Outsider Supply in 2025.
We made it.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Isn't it Chinese New Year today?
Yes, it is. It's the year of the snake.
That's right. It's Year of the Wood Snake, and it's also the new moon in Aquarius today.
I'll take your word for it.
It's true. It's also White Pill Wednesday.
That's right. It sure is.
Yeah, we love White Pill Wednesday. Yo, except for it's not the same without White Pill. But we're like getting you in here like through alternative channels.
Yeah,
We're gonna we're gonna restore you.
we're making it work.
We're making it work. How's it been going?
It's been going busy start to the new year. A lot happening. We just dropped. Well, you guys just dropped a new site redesign, which looks fantastic on mobile. I'll say definitely better than PC because all the scrolling just makes it hard. But on mobile, with how smooth it is, it's just so much nicer.
I'm gonna change it up on the desktop. Cause yeah, actually like when I was making that, I was like, why don't I do a mobile centric design for mobile? So
Mm-hmm.
we're a small team, we're growing, we're changing. I'm gonna make something a little different for desktop, but that still feels fun and narrative. Um and yeah, actually like this design is actually a perfect example of what we were talking about a minute ago about things sort of falling from the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I'm gonna revisit it. What happens in my life is that I make art for like one day and then I do other homework for the other 29 days. It's like it tends to happen that way. And so we've been doing a lot of stuff to actually clear out more space so that there's more room for creativity instead of just managing things, and it's going to be very important for like unleashing us. But yeah, so it's just very interesting because when you are building something, there's just such a temptation to try and do what's normal and like look around and be like, oh, what are some big things that are successful, and then you just sort of do it in their style. And we've done stuff that was really funky before, but we kind of kept coming back to things that feel a little bit more status quo, and actually it's just not really us. So to me, I just started saying, okay, well, why don't instead we're already making art about art, so when we present this, let's make art about art about art. Like just the art inception, just like going deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, it was just a very interesting process, and maybe this is just a natural creative process that I've been too much in my masculine side and like just organizing things and whatnot to actually fully experience. But I feel like there was just an opening, and then the ideas were like floating there, and then that's where they came from. It was somewhere else up here. And I feel like that is, for my contribution to Outsider Supply, kind of the new way that I'm working that feels easier, clearer, more successful, more authentic, and just truer to art. Like, you know, it's already something to say. One of the biggest controversies in art, or like when you're making art, is okay, how are you actually, like, are you making any money? Are you going to make any money from this? There's always that like age old debate, right? Of like, oh, if money comes into any type of contact with art, then the art's no longer pure.
Mm-hmm.
There is that like, really, really like hardcore idea, and I can totally get that.
Well,
Even
it's
though
kind
it
of
does take money.
radioactive. It's kind of radioactive. Like, you don't even have to be. You don't have to be like getting paid for it. It could be like just adjacent to what you're doing, and that could even cause a problem, right?
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it's like a philosophical thing that people feel. And it is nice to be a purist. Even though, like, most people that I've had those kind of conversations with were students at a really expensive art school. you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, and it took money to make their art. And so it can be, and I like a lot of them are just like Trustafarian Marxists. So I feel like, of course, part of the whole idea of outsider supply is to show artists, is actually, in addition to doing our own thing and having a good time, it's also to show artists one way that you could make art and make a living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to sort of destigmatize the divide between artist and society somewhat. Even though I get it, it's hard. It's like good old society. But I think that it's important because so often the artist is owned by the industry, right? It's like they're owned by the industry or they're owned by a patron, or their art is really not their primary vocation. It's just rare. That's why you have so many like people that went to really good art schools that wind up not they give it up. Because by the time that you work your full-time job and then you go home to make your art, like, it's almost like, how can you even do that? It's just too exhausting, right? It's like, in order to like be making art that you love, I think you do need a certain, I mean, some people get into manic states and they also do well that way. But I know for me, it's like, I'm better off if I'm rested and like, feeling like a whole person when I show up to the art
Yeah.
rather than, just forcing it through.
Yeah, or have your just like attention divided, so you don't really have like mental capacity to give yourself the room to come up with ideas, because you can't just like sit down and channel the muse at your will. Like, it's something that just kind of happens as a matter of circumstance. Like, certain things come together. You hear a familiar sound, you smell a familiar smell, or just, I don't know, something in your sensory organs hits you, and you're like, oh, there's something there. I could capture that, or just like a faint like idea that just pops into your head after you saw something. And if you're not in a place to kind of be receptive to that, then you could just easily overlook it and be like, oh, it doesn't mean anything, or that's stupid. Why would I do that? Or you just don't even think about it at all. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it just doesn't reach you because you're just not available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what Rick Rubin is. That's like his core message, really, is to be available. And um yeah, I felt like that was really life-changing for me when I read a segment of the Creative Act where he's talking about how the ideal role of the ideal state of being for the artist is to be in a state of being able to receive,
Mm-hmm.
which is literally contrary to a lot of the way the world works. Because I mean, this literally goes directly into a discussion on the divine feminine and the divine masculine, and or masculine and feminine generally. But I like to try and elevate these ideas to the highest expression, because then I feel like I see more clearly what the aim is. And so if you are constantly in your masculine and you're always doing, then yeah, you just don't have the opportunity to actually be available and receive. And so it has nothing to do in that kind of thing with actually being a boy or girl. It's that within everyone, there is that combination, and you want to learn and be available to finding a balance with that, and then you actually also wielding that power. It really is power. And so Rick Rubin is talking about how if you it's very that there okay well there are ideas out there floating in the vaster landscape of consciousness that are become ripe. They're like ready to happen at a certain time, and if you're not available to it, somebody else will receive it. Or it's like he's like, don't be surprised if you have an idea and then you actually see someone come along and do it at the same time. I get so confused with how to move my head because this is a mirror image. It's just so hard.
Oh, don't think about it. Just let it channel you. Just let it channel you.
Channel.
That's right. Don't think about it. The Rick Rubin way.
Oh gosh, it's so hard. Okay. So yeah, but so just truly that's what. And I've seen it happen a couple of times in my own life where I'm like, oh, I had an idea, and then boop, it'll like show up somewhere else. Or even like with a product, where you're like, they say it's like great minds think alike. I don't know if it's exactly what that is. I think it's not okay, yeah, you could follow a logical train of thought that would maybe come up with like a best case scenario. But for these type of things that are inspired and that feel more ethereal, there is something to it about being available and being ready to receive it. And so, yeah, so that's why everyone's like, what is Rick Rubin even doing? And it's like, he just pretty much figured out how to, like, he doesn't have to come up with the answers. It's actually not even,
he just taps
they're
into
just
it.
available. Yeah, exactly.
I saw a clip of his the other day when he was talking about I forget who the artist was. I couldn't be bothered to remember, but it was this like rock band, and they had this one bridge in their song where they just didn't have the lyrics. Just like sitting on it endlessly, just for days on end in the studio, and the lead singer's like, bro, I have no fucking clue. I have no idea what to put here. I am at a loss. I'm fully tapped out. I have no idea what to do. So Rick Rubin goes over to him. He's like, all right, come here. And he had a bookshelf. And he's like, all right, just pick a book, random book. Don't even think about it. Just reach. He goes out, gets the book. He's like, all right, open it to a random page. First phrase that you see. And he looks at it. I forget the exact lyrics, but it ended up being like perfect for the song. And it ended up also being like the crescendo where all the emotional buildup of the song happens just completely unexpectedly. Takes out a book and reaches it and just comes out of nowhere. Which, I mean, like, look, you want to debate like the chances of that happening or how it would fit or whatever. That's neither here nor there. The fact that it happened is like that kind of speaks for itself. And yeah, no, like tapping into that spirit, it is of the utmost importance. If you have like if you're up till like midnight working on something and you got to get to your day job the next day, and the day job is at like 6 a.m., but at the last second you feel this like little like spark of like an idea of just something forming, you gotta like work on it. You gotta take the L and pull like a 3 hour sleep, if that's what it takes. Because like I mean that legitimately. If you ever have that feeling where you're like, oh, I there's something that's like building up outside of me that I need to like work on, you got to move heaven and hell to actually to execute it. You got to make sure that like you have the room, you got to make sure you have the space, put the time into it, because like you have no idea what that could lead to. No idea what that developing that idea, that creative pursuit can actually lead to. And
That's
to your point,
right.
and to your point when you said that there's the possibility of somebody else having that same idea, like I mean it's only natural. We all live in the public zeitgeist, right? Like there's only so many unique ideas that one can have. Just about everything that's ever that ever could be done has been done by greater people than you or I. But doesn't mean that that should discourage anyone. Like I've had people like tell me like, oh, I want to start a podcast, or I want to write this, or I want to do that, but there's just so many other people that are much better at me. It's like, yeah, and like like, are you doing it for the audience, or are you doing it for yourself? And like going back to Rick Rubin, his whole thing is about every artistic pursuit should be a diary entry to yourself, because that's the best way to go about it. Because then you're not thinking about the audience, you're not thinking about what people are gonna how they're gonna perceive the work. You do it for yourself, you make it good, and if you're passionate and true to that, then there's got to be people that are gonna love it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And I think exactly like when inspiration strikes, you want to be able to act on it.
You have to.
And
You're
yeah,
not
you
gonna
just
get it
have,
ever again. You're never gonna be in the exact same spot to channel that again.
yeah, that's so real. And yeah, and if you don't, then poof, it's gone.
Yep.
So, and it's just like everything, like if you do get into that space in your life where you literally trust the circumstance and you're like, for some reason, I missed my exit, you know? It's like whatever thing happens, you develop a trust, and it's almost like if you actually almost energetically put out that trust, that you're like, okay, well, I missed my exit for some reason. I don't know what the reason is, but literally the act of simply trusting that, and even just making sure that you don't get thrown off into some negative stratosphere, but you just literally stay trusting, then somehow in the grand like scheme of life, the butterfly effect, if you will, there's something to that where if you're trusting that it's all ordained, not only do you just help make sense of your own life, but I think also that you allow every single life circumstance to work for your benefit. And yeah, it's like you don't know like let's say you have that thing that you stay up all night and you create something, and let's say it's like it's never even it's just for you, and you never even share it because you just made it because you love it, you know? There's still something about that that ripples out. And not only that, but I mean, you could also share it out. I'm just saying that no matter what, it's like a twist in the plot that matters.
Oh yeah.
Um,
No, absolutely. Even if it's shit, and chances are it's gonna be shit. Like 99% of the stuff that we do is shit. Like that's just that's I mean on a scale of averages, we're not all like Elon Musk's and Michelangelo's, right? Like we're not all that capable of ascending to those heights, and that's fine. Like that's part of the process. Failure is a good thing. It's not. It obviously has a negative connotation, but that part of the artistic process is 100% part of it. Like the first few episodes that we do of this, by the 10th or 20th or 30th one, we're gonna look back and be like, oh my god, that was so fucking stupid. Why did we ever think this was a good idea? This is so dumb. This layout doesn't work, or this transition, like what have you. But that's part of it. That's absolutely that's
yeah,
part of the process, and you can't. There's this when I have kids, I want to make sure that I ingrain this into them, like that this idea of failure is actually it needs to be turned on its head. It's not this like negative like boogeyman thing that we should fear. No, it's part of the process. That's how you learn. Nobody's gonna be perfect at everything that they do. Like you have to learn that. Even if you learn that like well into your fucking 90s. Like yeah, I hope so. I hope I'm still learning that. Not like painfully to the point where it costs me certain things in life, but you have to be open to that.
yeah, you're still available to have fun. You're like randomly you're 95 and you're like, I want to take up baking, whatever it
Yeah,
is you
and then
want
you
to
burn
do, and you
everything.
turn 95. Or you're like, I want to play pickleball or whatever these people are doing these days. It's like we only start judging ourselves probably once we get into school, because a baby learning to stand up is not like pitching a fit when they don't stand up. They just keep trying, you know? And then when they do stand up, it's like so exciting, you know? And they actually laugh and they are like, they recognize their own victory. So I feel like there's just something about that that is like, we should never lose that. And I feel like there's just so many paradigm shifts that are going on right now, and that there probably is about to be like the world's most conscious parents coming online. I mean, I know they've always been there, but I feel like there's maybe it's just teapot like what we're talking about there, but it feels nice to have that kind of conversation going on. And it feels like there is actually like a revolution in ways. So it's like, yeah, like totally should be learning that from we actually already know it. It's just that it gets taught out of us. Like,
Yeah, and art
you
is
know,
like art is the perfect medium where you can actually explore that. Like it is absolutely the perfect medium where failures can be celebrated. Like it is one of the greatest things ever. Where like I don't know, I've had times when like I've made it like some kind of piece in the past, and I think that I like fucked up because the image of what I had in mind, like it didn't execute, whether like consistency of the paint or the canvas or like the wind is blowing or like what have you, right? Like whatever work that I'm doing. Um, but at the end of the whole process, like just kind of throughout it, I realized, oh well, okay, well this might be a fuck up from one perspective, but when I think of the piece in this way, when I interpret it in this way, it works thematically. Like the coloring or what have you, like the technique, it actually does add to it. Um, and that's fine. And even if the whole thing just ends up being shit, like whatever it is that you're doing, a poem that you're writing, a painting, any of these things, it's it's the like part of the fun is the failure.
yeah,
Part of the fun is the failure, and you have to learn at some point. Like Bob Ross was the greatest painter of all time, from day one,
yeah,
right?
right. And he just had so much fun with art. Like the show's literally called The Joy of Painting. We love Bob. Like, absolutely. That's what too. It's like if you just can keep your sense of joy. I feel like also it's so common. I've been there too, where it's like you go through like the tortured, like dark night of the soul. There was definitely a time period where it was like I wasn't eating, I was pulling all-nighters. I was like literally one time I just like was like, I hate this work so much. I literally took like a kitchen knife and cut it up. I was like, all right, I'm so dramatic. Like this
Well,
just
especially if you're at school for it, right? Like you're dealing with grades and going on to the next level, and like you're kind of competing with your classmates. Like it adds that kind of, I don't know, lens to it. It kind of
yeah. Well,
poisons it in a way.
yeah. Well, what's interesting is there were no grades, which made it almost it's actually the correct way to do art school in my opinion. Like after I've been through it, even though it was a hard transition because I was just such a hardcore academic before that, and I could not even understand life without grades. I had no perception of how I was doing, and um yeah, and one of my one of my good friends, we would just joke, we would call ourselves recovering academics because we couldn't figure out how to feel about what we were doing.
Mm.
But it's like you actually everything's so unique and individual. So, what can be hard about an actual like art school setting is simply that I don't know, for me there was such a crash course in self-awareness that it was a little bit like you're like, "Oh, you just like you had to kind of see yourself, and so that was almost like it pulled you out of the matrix a little bit.
Mm.
We actually called that class the Matrix.
Mm.
It's like just a wild and like esoteric torture chamber. And nobody made anything that was really good in that class. There was no way to really make anything good. It was definitely like shitty quality. Like we were getting our ideas out. And uh yeah, so it's like there weren't grades, and I feel like that was actually a really good disorienting thing, even though yeah, like I know my classmates were a really small class for like 15 people, and most of us had come from different backgrounds. Like a lot of us had not come from working in art or design, and at least one person was sleeping under their desk in the studio every single night for the entirety of grad school. Like,
Mm.
and yeah, there were no grades. So it was sort of funny, but we just we were really an ambitious class, and everybody's work looked different, but it was very hard to figure out. It was just very hard to figure out whether you liked your work or not. And I just think it just takes time. Some people, they've been making work, they come in with more of a style or like just experience. But definitely like if you were sort of just going right into it fresh, you felt like you should already know how to like make this thing, but you couldn't because you needed $10,000 to make that thing, or like whatever, any type of practical constraint where it's just like you just said, like it was just hard to translate your idea. So there is something to be said about like you can develop technique that could be really important to people's practice, because then it's like you just have the tools and the fluidity to make what you envision. Technique can kill a little bit of creativity too. So I feel like that's why like Picasso, he was just always like he was honestly like wanting to undo his sense of technique, but he almost never could because his paintings never really looked childlike, you know?
Well, they did
Um,
towards the end.
he was trying, yeah. But it was just like, it wasn't really childlike because it's almost impossible to go back. So there's something to be said for that, like maintaining some naivety, being self-starting, not knowing everything. But yeah, just make stuff and just you'll eventually, the truth is that you do know what you like in your heart of hearts, and that's where I think the spiritual side of things can actually get you there too. Like of course some of that is also going to be impacted over time as you're going, because you're living life, you're experiencing things, you're seeing stuff, you're feeling stuff. But I think like really when you get to it, it's more of a homecoming than it is like, oh, I arrived there. It's truly more about coming back to self, in my opinion. And I just want to say too, with Rick Rubin, with that telling them to go to the book, like to the bookshelf and pull this thing, I guarantee you that like that was his intuition for that exact moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
he might have like a list of tools that he would look to, and it is good to have some like you would call like generative frameworks. If you're stuck and you want to come up with an idea, like maybe there are some things that you can do. You're like, I am going to go to the bookshelf, or I am going to literally like do a collage, or like go, I'm gonna take 100 things and I'm gonna make like 1,000 combinations. Like I'm gonna take this and this and combine it in a whole bunch of different ways. Like there are a lot of ways that you could really help yourself generate. And sometimes you really need to, like, it actually is like you need to like invite the inspiration. I feel like with art and design and however that gets defined, it can be a little bit different. And also like whenever I was working at Duke, it was like that's what some of my colleagues taught me. They're like, you just get out all the bad ideas first. Just get them out. It's like sketch them out, work them out, get them out, And cuz yeah, you'll be like, "Oh, like with outsider supply, we have done so many things that then we had to go back and do like 1,000 tasks because we changed our minds." We're like, oh no, that's not good anymore. We hate it. It's like, or whatever. We made it at the time. We're like, oh, that's so cool, And then you look back and you're like, hmm. But there's something to be said for, yeah, enjoying the process and also the rawness of things. Like when something first starts and it's actually really raw, I think that's so fun. It's actually not all figured out. It's just straight up raw and like maybe a little minimal, or maybe a little chaotic or whatever it is, but it's not just coming off as like completely commercialized industry standard. It's like it's fun to feel like something's being created too, I think, and to like witness that. Like there's a rawness to things that, like if you go to an underground gallery, it's just, or it would be like going to the original Woodstock versus like any other Woodstock that ever happened after that. It's just like the original one is like the one you wanted to be at.
Yeah, and you don't
You
even
know?
know that it like of what it of what that is going to be for years to come until, you're gifted with the gift of hindsight. Um there's no way to tell like how significant or important that moment's can like you have a very hard time like understanding it in the moment, when you're channeling the creative muse, as it were, of where that could lead. But it's no, it's absolutely critical to be open to that kind of stuff, because it actually, like, it is a skill to not second guess yourself, to not critique yourself into a box so that you can't like get out because you're stuck with all these different conventions, like, oh well, this is tacky, oh well, that's contrarian, or that's this or that, like all these labels. It can really get in the way of the process, and that goes for any creative pursuit, like whether you're writing, you're painting, you're drawing, like what have you. um there's absolutely nothing wrong, in my opinion, with stealing from the greats. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. This whole idea that like taking inspiration from them. I mean, it's one thing to literally like pawn off Shakespeare as as your own works, um,
Sure.
but it's another to like to be inspired with it. In my opinion, the best way to go about it is to do first and ask permission later, so that like if in the final stages of your work you realize, okay, no, that was actually like I'm biting off a little bit too much. I need to actually insert more of myself here. That's fine.
Mm.
That can be done in the edit. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You can retrace your steps and see what you can do. But there's absolutely like nothing wrong with taking techniques or styles and adopting them as your own. Because like, look, at the end of the day, like nothing we do is original. Absolutely nothing. Everything is influenced by everyone else. Nobody can really credit themselves as like 100% like original idea. Even outside of art, anybody that studies any kind of like very very technical theory in like STEM fields, it's all built on the work of the people before them. Same thing with
Huh.
art. Exact same thing with art. Like
Yeah.
every song has been done. Like how many songs are like named after Mary Sue or what, whatever the hell. Like there's an endless amount of them, and there's absolutely nothing wrong if you just like need to get some inspiration, or you're just getting started and you don't know what to do. Look at what the greats have done, and if you like that, then emulate it and make it your own. Absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
There's like this weird sense of shame that we feel. Like I used to feel it when I went to university, of just like I'd be writing a paper and I'd be thinking, man, like I want to make this argument, but like this is the exact same argument that I've seen in such and such and such writing. And then I would block myself because I was like, no, like I'm supposed to come up with original ideas. And then I beat my head against that wall enough times where I was like, yeah, idiot. There's no original ideas. everything everything is taken, everything is copied, everything is stolen. That's part of the process. That's how civilization works. We don't like there are very few people. I don't think there's even a single person alive today that can even say that like, yeah, my idea is one of one, it's original, it's not based on anything else. Like that's an alien. That's not a person you're talking to. That's an alien, okay? Because whatever they came up with is outside of this world.
Yeah, exactly. Like we can't conceptualize what that would be because it's not in our frame of reference. Because like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. I think that it's very important. Like a lot of people, yeah, yeah, it's very interesting. Like, um, I want to say too that there's almost like there's actually something so important about going back. And again, that's like part of what we're doing. What that is, and outsider supply is going to grow and change, and we're going to have contemporary art coming into the realm. But there will always be a historical. It's always going to be about art history, whether it was then or now. Whether it's either art history in the making right now, or it's about art history, like things that have happened in the past. And it will expand very broadly to like other cultures outside the canon, all this stuff. We're gonna accelerate and pick up velocity in terms of what we make. And then we just have so much that we want to make. So it's like, but with that, it's like, and again, not just within art, but within society, and I feel like this is such a really important theme and topic too right now, is that we really should not abandon everything that everyone else did figure out before we got here. Like the obsession with being novel is exactly why people will, well, it's kind of like exactly why we have the modern pharmaceutical industry instead of just taking care of ourselves intuitively, for example. You know, it's like, of course, things have improved. Things like, I mean, there are miracles that can happen, right? It's like you can have surgeries, you can do all this stuff. People understand things at a molecular level or somewhat. It's like, but really, like a lot of the things that we seek cures for, and we do have to develop these really complex things to address, which is cool because it's like, you know, it's really understanding the body in ways. But in truth, if we were really just interested about wellness and not sort of artificially extending life, even when someone's just truly not taking care of themselves, for example, it's like if we just go back to the ancients and like kind of really what we already know and is truly baked into our instinct, which we were also very cut off from just by being overly socialized, um, then you know what I'm saying? It's like there's so much value to that. Or like going back, and obviously like Renaissance and like all of that is such a big theme right now, as it should be. And even again, if you look back to that, the artists of the Italian Renaissance were looking back to Alexandria. And the time of Alexandria, they were just like scoping out, they were trying to gather knowledge from all over the entire world that people had already figured out so that they could have the knowledge and the tools, and then they could build on that. So it's like that is why you had such advanced things happening, is because they had gathered the knowledge, they were wise, and they approached life like that. And yeah, and truthfully too, I want to say like there's so much importance, and like even though maybe not everybody is uh like having the same type of role as Elon, um cuz he's in his own special lane of his gifts and his purpose. It's like each person does have that in their own signature way. So it's like it is really important to, like, I kind of have a hard time feeling like anybody's more important than anyone else, you know, like just period. I know people like do things that have a big impact, or like people might have like a really big um like, okay, obviously we can see with like the turn of the tide, like with Trump, like, you know, putting his foot down and like stuff's changing. Who you are does matter. Um, he does have an impact in his way, but just because he's functioning on the level of making the world turn in that way, and like he's able to get on that very high level of management, it's like he's actually really, in God's eyes, he's like no more important than any other person. So it's really about like as individuals just aligning with your own self. And I feel like the word that's come up for me lately is divine mandate. And it's like if you can get in touch with your divine mandate, like what are you here to do? Maybe not everybody doesn't need that, but like I really needed that
Well, it's
clarity.
all yeah. I mean, it's like judging yourself against like other. It's a fruitless endeavor. Like, there's no point in like playing philosophical games like that too, because ultimately there's there's no way to quantify in some kind of like single percentage worth of like what someone's life is worth, or the potential of someone's life. It's like a nearly impossible, if not outright impossible thing to even discuss. Like philosophically, sure, you could make arguments, use some kind of statistics of like the group that person's a part of, but like as an individual, it's nearly impossible. But just to kind of bring it back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of like when somebody tries to make something new. Because when you said about the pharmaceutical industry, it made me think of um, the idea that like when someone is trying to divorce their ideas from things that have led to the creation of that idea, so they're trying to pass it off as something absolutely brand new that no one has ever thought of, and um, it's going to lead to a new beginning. I feel like just about anytime someone's done that, you're kind of like leading yourself to disaster, or you're preemptively dooming yourself to failure because you're failing to recognize what has actually like come in the past, all the circumstances that have led to this moment. Um, like I'm having a hard time like uh, thinking of an example of when someone has done this in art. Um, you know what? I think the AI art example, or like the issue right now, how a lot of how there's a lot of people that disagree with it as to whether or not it's art or not, and they're presenting it as something like entirely new, and it's completely divorced from any kind of creative spirit of humanity. When in reality, it's just an extension of it.
Yeah.
It's exactly like it's everything that has come up until now, except like on steroids, and it's like much cheaper to make, and you can make living an entire living off of it. You could just like set up a contract with some kind of a store, and make like postcards for them with AI. Like I don't know if you've seen this. If you went to like during the holidays to get some cards for your family, but I noticed that like yeah, a lot of them are like AI generated, and I was like, oh look at that, like this is everywhere now. Like this is not just something that I see on Twitter or what have you. Like this is actually just bleeding out into the real world, and it's not an argument anymore. Now like there's an e-commerce example of someone actually doing it and making money off of it. So this
Yeah.
like this argument that some people make that oh this is something that's totally novel. We can't allow it. We must slow it down. No,
Yeah.
there's
It's not
nothing you can
happening.
do. It's not happening. I remember I was arguing
Yeah.
with someone on the timeline about it, and they were they said oh like, oh you're part of EAC, like you're a developer, like you don't understand what this is gonna do to all these people's jobs. And I was like, look, I first of all not affiliated with EAC. I'm adjacent to it. I'm not really part of the movement. I've never written a single line of code. I'm just an enthusiast. Um, and you're not gonna stop this. And this guy worked in um, like copyright law, I guess. So he obviously had an axe to grind about it. But in my head, I was like, look, man, in 5 years, copyright's not gonna mean a damn thing. It really isn't.
It's
It
it's
really isn't.
already so complicated and it's
Yeah.
already kind of BS. Like,
When
I mean,
Grok, yeah, I'll just finish with this. When Grok came out, the first model that was doing AI images, you could ask it. I don't know if you could still do it now, but you could ask the original Grok to give you. At first, you were allowed to do like full copyright images, so like generate an image of SpongeBob, generate an image of Family Guy or whatever, and like people came up with some crazy shit. But then it
mm,
got a little patched, so then people started saying, generate me a copyright accessible image of such and such, and they found a workaround. But I mean, look, OpenAI, not to get too in the weeds here, but like they've been hyping up this latest model that they came out with, and then in the last couple days, this Chinese company that I mean people barely heard about starts to put out an open source model free on the internet for everyone to access, and they're like, oh yeah, we did this and it's much better, and we did it for a fraction of the cost. So yeah, that's how it's gonna happen. Like people are eventually just gonna have this tech that has never been played with before, and it's gonna be out there, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. So any attempts to slow it down, like you're divorcing yourself from the
from
truth.
reality.
Just yeah, well no, like just to tie it back to the original point, like if you're kind of trying to break that sequence to say like, oh no, this is the new age. This is gonna usher in this new. No, this is the exact same thing that we've been doing before, except now it's on steroids. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the thing is like people will come to terms with AI art as the AI art as a medium, just like any other medium that you would use. At the end of the day, you're going to decide which artist that you like. Like what art do you like? I mean, you would never say that like a kindergartner that draws a flower that's not art. You know, you're going to say it's art. You're going to maybe put it on a different register than like a Caravaggio, okay? It's just a different register of art, if you will, like a
Of
different register
course.
of language, different register of art. It's like you could speak really, really super chill slang, or you could speak really high English or high German or whatever you're speaking, you know? And so I just think that it's like it's people will they'll get it or they won't. But to me, no matter what, um I think the most important thing is that people do tap into the bigger consciousness beyond this realm. I know that's like getting so esoteric and spiritual, and that is what it is. It's actually so spiritual. So I just feel like right now, it's just time to actually bring all your spiritual gifts online and whatever domain that you're working in, or just whatever is going on throughout your day, you're bringing those online. And I feel like that's actually I feel like that's actually what's important.
Oh
And
yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like that's actually is where like the revolutionary ideas come from. Um, and yeah, I hate to do this, but I have to wrap it up. And I know you do too. Once we get going, it's like hard to stop. But um, but yeah, maybe just to kind of like just bring this like brief but powerful discussion
I
to
got
a conclusion.
I got a thought if I can
Yeah,
end it off. Um,
yeah.
and this is something that I've come across not just in my own experience, but now I'm seeing it in a lot of the people that I've interviewed for the White Pill podcast. Mind you, most of these people are in AI or some kind of a STEM field, but the sentiment that I'm hearing a lot these days is that the people that are going to be best suited to navigate the world that we're going to live through in the next couple of decades are going to be the people that can leverage, uh, first of all, not only leverage the technologies that they have access to, so be able to actually use them, know how to prompt AI or know how to work with 3D printers or what have you, right? Understand how to work a browser, maybe even ask an AI how to generate you some code, but also the people that uh, have an aesthetic taste that they curate and develop, because once it becomes easier to create ideas and it becomes quicker and cheaper and more accessible, the people that are going to win out are not just going to be the people that are able to do that like quickly on a dime and just pump out like 50 AI generated whatevers at a moment's notice, but the person that can curate it, the person that has a sense of style, some understanding of history, of culture, of philosophic ideals, anybody that's able to kind of see the bigger picture of what it is that they're making and can use the muse and tap into that state of mind, that's the person that's going to win out. Because at the end of the day, if everyone is on this or on the similar playing field where everybody has access to AI, everybody has enough money to go to the paint store and buy the cheap supplies or what have you, at that point, whoever wins out or whoever does the best or whoever's the most able to succeed, and it's not necessarily about winning. That's a bad word to choose here. But the person
Sure.
that's able to self actualize in the most effective way,
Mm.
from everything that I've been hearing from everyone that I've spoken to, is the kind of person that's not only going to be able to come up with the ideas, but understand just conceptually what the intention of the idea is, its meaning, its significance, being able to tap into the muse and actually make it work for them. Because at that point, when it becomes so seamless to generate a clip or a painting or 3D printing or what have you, then it's about the quality of your ideas, of how solid they are, right? Of you being able to actually have that Rick Rubin moment of going to a bookshelf, picking out a random book, and then, interpreting it like that, or whatever form it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. And I think that is exactly what that's why everything that you just said also just alludes to the divine, because there is such a thing, even though beauty, for example, can take a lot of different appearances, there are certain things that do flow from the divine. So it's not about being strict, like, oh, let's return to Baroque styling. Okay, we can
Mm-hmm.
have as much Baroque as we want, you know? But it is simply about actually principles of beauty that are also tend to be wrapped up in math and also spirit, like your heart. So I do think that that's very true. And I think that's such an optimistic White Pill Wednesday kind of thing to talk about because really by doing that, it's like we're gonna return to what's actually really good for us because it's gonna be edifying and it's also even gonna be like really good for our mental state, really good for our health because those things are gonna line up. You know, again, it's like just to touch back to like the pharaohs, um, they were so obsessed with having a super clean body and like being really fit because they knew from their experience and their wisdom that by being in that pristine physical state, which makes complete sense because it basically means you're emptied out of toxins that don't need to be there, it's not clouding your thinking, it's not causing illness in your body, you know, you're a pure, clean vessel and you actually are available to connect with with the divine because that's your frequency. It's literally like it requires the entirety of the human being. And so I think it's a beautiful there's a lot of beauty to come. And I don't know if it's like all of humanity will transcend to that or whatnot, but I absolutely agree that especially with the right amount of transparency that the ideas that really merit quote winning or spreading, we can even say, and being adopted, it will no longer be like, oh, I chose this because I went to the mall and this was what was available. No, it's like there's gonna be so much to choose from,
Mm-hmm.
and and I think also it can just like it can really align with your individuality while you're also fitting into these things that are actually truly wholesome and like good for the collective, like or everything being organic, for example, you know, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
No.
I think the future's bright, you know, like everybody just hang on and like and just make sure that the AGI goes in the right way. Like I do consider myself EAC. I don't code that much, but I am developing some SAS. I'm helping develop some SAS. I'm like looking at efficiencies. I absolutely like even with outsider supply, you know, it's like we're literally doing a little bit of developing right now to like create a solution that for something that's going to be fast and you know what? The human being isn't gonna sit there and do some type of monotonous clicking because we're just gonna automate that. You know? It's like I fully like that because I want as many people to feel like they could figure out what their true soul purpose is as possible, you know? It's like maybe when there's more room for people to I mean, look, industries are going to change. Like Uber drivers are about to be out, you know? It's like stuff comes and goes. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like you got to be flexible. They always say that too, the people that live the longest are very adaptable. And so we just adapt and we just trust and like be available to the divine. And I honestly think it's as simple as like wanting that will start to bring that into the picture if it's not already there. It's like once you it's like ask and receive. It will because and then you have to take action too. Like that's why I don't know. I'm about to start receiving like people in a studio to do actual energy work with them. I'm about to take my first person like in an actual studio coming up. So that's a whole other conversation, but like this all kicked off at the beginning of the year coming back for me coming back to these things. I got really sick for like a few weeks. It was like an initiation. It felt spiritual. I had to think about that too. And then like so there's some spirituality like that feels like it's really ready to like it's really ready to come in and doesn't matter if you're making art, software, construction worker, whatever you're doing, just honor yourself and acknowledge your divinity and have fun. Like, have fun. Whatever you're doing, have fun. Love and respect your energy and be ready for like a really good life because it's going to get super abundant. And also, like, a lot of people are going to like fall in love and like have families and all that good stuff is like in the works. It's always happening, but I think this year is going to be like a really special one.
That's
And
right.
in the coming years too, but it feels like a very special era, golden era of humanity. We're so here for it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Best place to end it off right there.
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys
Cool.
for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Don't know when we'll be streaming next, but just pay attention to our Twitter account. We'll have all the information posted there. Thanks for taking the time, McKenzie. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, White Pill. You're the best.
My pleasure. My
All right.
pleasure.
We'll
See
be
you guys
getting
next
your
time.
account restored and bringing White Pill back. Resurrecting White Pill. Please post on your account. Resurrect White Pill.
Yes, we're on a mission.
We're on a mission. All
That's
right.
right.
Well, you take care, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.